So Blizzard just dropped a ton of info regarding patch 10.1, and boy is there a ton of stuff to go over. We got new info on the raid, a new zone, cross-faction guilds, and of course the new Mythic Plus season, plus much more. But before we go over everything, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this type of content. But enough about that, let's actually get into it. Patch 10.1 was finally revealed by Blizzard and is being called Embers of Neltharion, and it's set to bring tons of new content to Dragonflight. One of the more exciting additions is the new zone called Zeralek Cavern, a massive underground location filled with tons of deep caverns for players to explore, which will offer players additional quests and story content. I think it's also safe to assume that we'll be getting tons of new world quests, treasures, and of course rares to farm. And on top of that, we're also getting some new armor sets that they're going to be putting out into the open world, which personally I think look really awesome. It's hard to tell because we don't have any in-game screenshots of them yet. All we have to go by is the concept art, but if that's all we have to go off of, I do think that there's potential that these are going to be really awesome. I mean, just as far as quality goes, the artwork, they look like they could be tier sets. Another exciting feature for this patch is the new raid, because with every content update, we of course have to get a raid. This one's called Arborus, the Shadowed Crucible. The raid is rumored to be an experimentation facility similar to Blackwing Descent. And just going off that alone means that we're going to be getting some pretty cool boss designs. Blizzard did show off some concepts of a couple of boss designs which I think look pretty neat. The Lava Hydra and the Elementium Dragon boss concepts both look really cool. They didn't give us a release date, but if we follow the schedule from Season 1, the raid itself will probably be going out a week after patch 10.1 goes live. As for the patch itself, players will probably have to wait a bit longer as the ETA for this is probably going to be between May and July. Now this isn't a confirmation, but that's just from my own speculation based on the roadmap that Blizzard gave us. In patch 10.1, Blizzard is revamping the upgrade system for gear. As someone who's been playing the game for a long time and spent quite a bit of time this season in Dragonflight, I personally am pretty excited for these changes, and I believe that they're a positive step forward for the game. The current Mythic Plus, Primal Storms, and PvP upgrade system can feel a little overwhelming and confusing at times. However, Blizzard is streamlining this process by introducing a new currency called Flightstones and Crests. Now, the Flightstones can be collected from just doing literally all forms of content, and the crests are going to be a little bit harder to obtain. These ones are actually going to be rewards from doing various difficulties for different things in the game, like Mythic Plus or, PvP, stuff like that. They're probably going to be pretty similar to how Titan Matrix are in the game, but in this form you're not going to need to use them for crafting, you'll just combine them with the Flightstones. But like I said, by combining the Flightstones and the crests, players can upgrade their gear to a higher item level. This new system makes it easier for players to understand how to upgrade their gear and ensures that everyone has a chance to improve their character's power level regardless of their preferred playstyle. It also gives players a reason to explore all types of content in the game, as Flightstones can be attained virtually by any activity. Now, I believe that these changes will actually make the game more accessible for all players and give them a clearer path to progress their character's power. Additionally, I think the new upgrade system will incentivize players to engage with more content, which is always a good thing for the longevity of the game. And I do think it's going to be a bit of an odd change. I do know that there are some people who like to farm Valor, but me personally, I'm not a fan. But it's not just the new content that's making this patch exciting. Blizzard has just announced that cross-faction guilds are coming to patch 10.1. This is huge news for players who have been frustrated with the limitations of single-faction guilds. In the past, players who wanted to play with their friends from the opposite faction had to pay for a faction change. This created a major issue of fracturing the community, as players had to leave their original faction to play with new friends. But with cross-faction guilds, that's all about to change. This new system allows players of both factions to join a single guild, breaking down barriers that have previously separated the factions. And while details are sparse at the moment, it's clear that this change will have a major impact on the way players interact with one another in the game. It's also worth noting that cross-faction grouping has been in the game for a while now, allowing players to group up with friends from the opposite faction for quests, dungeons, and raids. However, the inability to create a guild that spans both factions has been a major limitation for many players. Blizzard has not yet revealed all the details about how the cross-faction guild system is going to work, But we expect to see through testing on the PTR, and we're excited to see how this change will impact the game, and look forward to hearing more details about this in the coming weeks. Now, I think this is really awesome. I personally thought that they would have to wait for the next expansion, or at the very earliest, the end of this expansion, to finally implement this into the game. So for me, this is personally a really welcome surprise, and I think it's going to be an awesome change for the game. Now the only barrier to entry is going to be just the server transfers. So no longer are you going to need to faction change just to be in a guild with people. I personally love the aesthetic of the Alliance faction. I've been playing Alliance for, God knows how long. For me, Stormwind is my home, and I just love to chill there as a human or a gnome, but still be able to raid with a guild full of hordes is going to be really cool. Granted, I do think that this is going to tip the player population. I think we're going to see a huge influx of Alliance players in the near future. Mainly because for however many years now, the idea was if you guys wanted to raid seriously, you just went Horde, because that's where all the good raiders were. So over the years, the player population for, good raiders on Alliance side has slowly been dying. I mean, just look at the numbers for the Hall of Fame as far as rating each tier goes. It's a joke. But yeah, it looks like things are going to change, and now I think most people are actually going to be going back to Alliance, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this affects the player populations going forward. Now let's talk about some of the exciting changes that are coming to Mythic Plus for Season 2. First, let's talk about the fact that there's not going to be a seasonal affix this time around. While seasonal affixes have added an extra layer of challenge and variety for Mythic Plus, some players have felt overwhelmed with the complexity that they've added and to an already challenging dungeon. By taking a step back and focusing on refreshing the current affixes, Blizzard is showing that they're taking the player feedback into consideration and striving to create a more balanced experience. Speaking of balance, difficulty tuning is always a tricky thing to get right in WoW. Some players crave the toughest challenges the game has to offer, while others simply want to just enjoy the content without feeling like they're hitting a brick wall. By tweaking the affixes and being more mindful of the dungeon pool, Blizzard can hopefully strike a balance that satisfies both types of players. Now let's talk about the new dungeon pool for Season 2. We'll be seeing the first 4 dungeons which were created in Dragonflight that we didn't get a chance to see in Season 1, which are Halls of Infusion, Brackenhide Hollow, Uldaman, the Legacy of Tyr, and Neltharius. Then we're going to be getting the 4 new dungeons added to the pool from previous expansions like they did with Season 1, and these are Neltharian's Lair from Legion, Freehold from Battle for Azeroth, Underrot from Battle for Azeroth, and Vortex Pinnacle from Cataclysm. And I know some of you are probably sad to see some of these dungeons go. Personally, I wish they would just make Court of Stars permanent, because I really like that dungeon. But alas, it's time to say goodbye and welcome the new. Either way, it's great to see a mix of dungeons from different expansions, as it keeps things from feeling too repetitive. Of course, with any new dungeon pool comes the possibility of certain dungeons being more difficult than others. As the initial announcement noted, Blizzard is already aware that players have had some issues with Brackenhide Hollow. While it's unclear what changes that they're going to be making to address these concerns, it's reassuring to know that the devs are actually paying attention and working to improve the player experience. They even later commented in an interview that they're looking at the current pool of affixes and will try to come up with some solutions for players to make things smoother and not want our healers to break their own keyboards. In other news, Blizzard has announced the release date for the upcoming patch 10.0.7, and it's right around the corner. Players in America will get the patch on March 21st, and EU will get it on March 22nd. And while the full patch notes have not yet been released yet, players can expect a ton of changes to the game, and I'm sure you guys have probably already seen some of the stuff that's coming out. And I'm actually going to be putting out a full patch survival guide coming out probably the week before, so stay tuned for that. Recently, Morgan Day and Steve Denuser, 2 of the head guys over at Blizzard, sat down with Dratnos for an interview about WoW's upcoming content. Here are some of the highlights from the interview. There are no current plans to expand the existing renown tracks for the 4 factions in Dragonflight. While players have been hoping for new rewards or additional renown levels, it seems like Blizzard is content with how the systems are currently at right now. Zerlek Caverns, the huge new zone coming to the Dragon Isles, will have multiple entrances from every zone. This should make it easy for players to access the new content no matter where they are in the Dragon Isles. Tier sets will have a bigger impact on gameplay in Season 2 as they did from Season 1. This means that the player power that you get from the new tier sets is actually going to be a lot more than they currently are with the tier sets from Season 1. So that's right, you guys heard it. Getting your tier sets for the new raid is going to be even more important than they currently are. Shadow Priests are in for a major class rework. Again. Though I guess that's not surprising to Shadow Priest mains, as it seems like Blizzard really doesn't know what to do with that spec. But either way, I'm happy for the Shadow Priest community. I'm glad that that spec is still getting some attention, so that's good to hear. Blizzard is happy with how professions are currently doing in the game. While there may be some room for minor tweaks or adjustments, there are no major plans for changes in the near future. And that's what pretty much all the big cliff notes from the interview are. Overall, I think it's great to see Blizzard engaging with the community and sharing insights into the development process. I always love listening to these kinds of interviews, and who knows, maybe someday, if I get big enough, I might be lucky enough to do one of these interviews. One final note is that the PTR for patch 10.1 is actually likely to be scheduled later this week, so players will actually be able to get their hands on some of the new content on the PTR pretty soon. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for tuning in and checking out the latest updates coming to WoW. As a longtime WoW player myself, I'm always excited to hear about what's next for the game and just see what's next on the horizon. Whether you're a seasoned vet or a new player, there's always something new to get excited about. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and I'll be keeping a close eye on all the latest developments and sharing my thoughts with you guys along the way. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below. I love hearing from you guys and discussing the game with the community. And with that, I'll see you guys soon.